Rise of the Resistance finally opened at Disneyland Park in California. Opening over a month later after the Orlando version, the attraction finally opened here on Friday, January 17th. The crowds to get in on this attraction were going to be crazy since the opening is on a Friday during a holiday weekend. That means the Friday through Monday, the boarding passes for this ride are going to sell out within minutes of the park opening time. Yes, the only way to get on Rise of the Resistance is through a boarding group, which you reserve by using the Disneyland app or by a select few kiosks throughout the park. There is no standby queue for the ride, and the main reasons for this are so they don't have a giant queue stretching throughout the land and park. Guests aren't waiting in line for hours, quite possibly the whole day, and the attraction is still prone to many breakdowns considering its fairly new technology. So, I got to the parking lot at around 5 a.m. They had all guests arriving that early park in the Toy Story lot, which feels like it's further away from Mickey and Friends and Pixar Palace parking structures. It's a huge uncovered asphalt parking lot where the cast members park as well in their own area. There is no tram to the security booths on the Harbor Boulevard side, but they had buses that would transport you over there if you didn't want to walk along the public street. We were dropped off at the security entrance, and to my surprise, there was no line at all to get through. Once past that and the ticket booths, we saw the line to get into the park and found a spot to wait in at around 5:15. After a few minutes of waiting, they let guests into Main Street USA since the line to get into the park was reaching the entrance to California Adventure. This happened right around 5:55 p.m. Once scanned into the park, there was an initial sigh of relief from everyone in my party since that was the first step into getting a boarding group. But they weren't being distributed until 8 a.m., so we had to wait on Main Street for around 2 hours until that time came around. Basically, once you were scanned into the park, you could have left the property or do whatever you wanted since you were already scanned in. You just had to make sure you were ready to go at 8 a.m. But me and my party decided to stay in the park in case we missed any announcements, like they would release the boarding groups earlier than planned, which happened at Hollywood Studios' Galaxy's Edge. There was no need to line up anywhere, and people filled up the available seating areas as they waited for 8 o'clock. None of the shops were open except Starbucks, so there wasn't much to look at while we waited. There were many people sitting inside Main Street Cinema, so many that you could barely walk around in there. And after 30 minutes, at around 6:30, they opened up Main Street even more, and now held everyone at the hub or circle that leads you to almost all the lands in the park. And we stood there until 7:45 when they dropped the rope on all sides, 15 minutes before the park opening, but we still had to wait until 8 o'clock for the boarding groups to be distributed. Everyone rushed over to the kiosks that would dispense boarding groups if you didn't have a phone that could run the Disneyland app. Here you could see the crazy rush for the Buzz Lightyear kiosk. It seems everyone, including my party, decided to go to this as a backup in case the app didn't work. But after seeing the huge rush of people and the line stretching all the way to the submarine voyage, we decided to take our chances with the app. We actually tried to get away from all the crowds for the best possible cellular service, so we went all the way to It's a Small World, where no one was, and the data speed was much faster than when everyone was standing around at the hub and Tomorrowland. 5 minutes before 8, we made sure all of our phones were ready and all the tickets linked onto each other's apps. And then the time came. There was a moment of silence from everyone and anxiety until someone in our group cheered that they got us a group, and it was boarding group 81. Off in the distance, we heard cheers of others getting their boarding groups successfully. We were all amazed at the high boarding group we got, but soon found out that the initial groups were all distributed in less than 45 seconds. A few minutes later, all the extra or backup groups were gone as well. We found out that people who got here at midnight got later boarding times than us, so it was truly a lottery system, and the only thing that mattered was making sure you were scanned in before 8 a.m. We waited what felt like all day for our group to be called, and it finally happened at 6 p.m. So from the parking lot to then, it took over 13 hours to get on the ride. And the best part is, we didn't have to wait in a standby queue. We could do whatever we want throughout the day in the park. The actual ride was amazing, and I definitely need to ride it again to get a better review out. Disneyland has a great new ride that was well worth the wait, featuring a fairly new ride system and with effects never before seen on a ride. The storytelling, set design, ride length, and more were all phenomenal. I will post a full review of the ride in the coming days. After all that, I'm glad we got to ride the attraction because when we got group 81, it felt like they might not get to that number since it was progressing so slowly throughout the day, and the ride didn't open until almost 9 a.m., 1 hour after the park opening. It turns out you didn't have to get there so early that day, and parking at 6:30 a.m. in the normal lots would have been just fine. The reason I feel like everyone got there so early, including us, was because of the potential backed up security lines and line of cars trying to park. I think everyone was worried about not being scanned into the park before 8. It was definitely a fun and exhausting day. To make it even better, the park wasn't crowded at all for the whole day. For example, you could still get a fast pass for Space Mountain at 8 p.m. Well, I can't wait to get on this ride again, and I hope you enjoyed this coverage of the opening day madness for Star Wars: Rise of the Resistance at Disneyland. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe to the channel for more updates on SoCal theme parks.